Move out of my way. I don't have time for this. The billionaire snapped as he stormed through the airport terminal, furious that he had just missed his private flight. His voice sliced through the air like a whip, sharp enough to make nearby travelers flinch. He was a man known for control, for precision, for never being delayed by anything. But today, time had betrayed him. His jaw tightened as he stared at the empty gate. The red letters flashing departed like an insult written just for him. He turned sharply, ready to force the day back into order, when a small, trembling voice rose behind him, fragile but desperate enough to freeze his steps. "Please, somebody help." People heard it. People glanced. But people also looked away just as fast. Everyone was busy. Everyone had their reasons. And then through the sea of silent strangers, a little girl ran toward him with tears streaming down her cheeks, stumbling until she collided against his sleeve. "Please," she sobbed as she clutched his coat. "Please don't go. My mommy." "She isn't waking up." Her voice cracked on the last word, breaking something deep in the air around them. The entire terminal seemed to fall silent. Conversations faded. Even rolling suitcases slowed. Adrian Holley, the man who had spent years building walls around his time and heart, found himself staring into the frightened eyes of a child who had run to him because every other adult had turned. Away her hand shook as she pointed across the terminal toward a row of seats near the tall window. There, slumped sideways, lay her mother still, pale, her purse spilled across the ground. People had moved away from her, as if her distress were inconvenient. Adrian felt a heaviness stir inside him, an old buried instinct he'd spent years ignoring. He followed Lily. He didn't know her name yet, but felt her feel like a pulse and hurried toward the woman. Her breathing was shallow, her pulse weak. Lily knelt beside her mother, gently shaking her arm, whispering the way children do when they're trying not to break. "Mommy, please wake up. Please." Adrian folded his expensive coat and placed it under the woman's head, slipping into a calm he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't the calm of a businessman. It was the calm of a man who had once been trained to save lives. Memories flickered, dust, heat, the way a fallen comrade once looked up at him with fading eyes, but he blinked them away and focused on the woman now. Someone called for medical help, he said in a steady voice. But again, the world hesitated. People exchanged uneasy glances. Phones stayed untouched. It was the sort of silence that revealed something ugly. Everyone hoped someone else would step forward so they wouldn't have to. Adrian didn't wait. He checked the woman's airway, adjusted her posture, and felt her breathing grow slightly steadier beneath his hands. Lily looked at him with trembling hope. "Is she going to be okay?" she asked. Adrian's answer came softly, but with certainty. "We're going to take care of her." "You're not alone." A woman pushed through the circle, then a nurse, judging by the badge clipped to her sweater, and knelt beside him. She checked the woman's pulse and gave a relieved nod. "Good thinking," she murmured. "You kept her stable. You've done this before, haven't you?" Adrian didn't reply, but his silence was answer enough. For a moment, the crowd watched them work in awe, their judgment replaced with quiet respect, but tension snapped when airport security rushed in, their expression stern. "What's happening here?" "Sir, step back from her. Right now." Lily stood up fast, planting herself between Adrian and the officers with a courage that didn't match her size. "He's helping her." "Don't make him stop." The nurse supported her, saying, "He stabilized her. He knows exactly what he's doing." The officers hesitated, caught between protocol and the obvious truth unfolding before them. Adrian rose slowly, not confrontational, but unwavering. His voice carried the weight of everything he'd lived through, everything he'd lost. If a person needs help, he said quietly, you move. You don't wait for someone else to care. His words hung heavy in the air, striking deeper than anything the officers expected. They stepped back, their hard expressions softening into guilt. "Continue," the lead officer said, almost in a whisper. Minutes later, paramedics arrived, carefully lifting the woman onto a stretcher. Lily followed closely, holding her mother's hand. But before she stepped onto the ambulance platform, she turned back to Adrian. Her eyes, still wet and scared, carried something else now: gratitude, trust, relief. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for stopping, even when no one else did." She ran toward him and wrapped her small arms around him in a hug, so genuine that it broke through every wall he had built around himself. It was the kind of hug that reminded him of someone he once lost, a little sister who used to cling to him the very same way before the world took her too soon. When Lily pulled away, the crowd that had once judged him now stood quietly, respectfully. Some placed hands over their hearts. Some nodded. Some simply watched in awe of a man they thought they knew, but clearly never understood. Adrian stood tall again, not as the billionaire the world recognized, but as the man he used to be, the man he suddenly realized he missed. As the ambulance doors closed, and Lily's face disappeared behind the tinted glass, Adrian exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He looked back toward the gate where his plane had once waited. Missing that flight had felt like the worst thing that could happen a short time ago. Now, it felt like life had pulled him toward the exact moment he was meant to be in. He had not lost time today. He had been given a moment to remember who he was, and as he walked slowly through the terminal, his thoughts whispered an old truth he had forgotten. Strength isn't measured in power or wealth. It's measured in the lives you live when no one else will. Asterisk, the world had moved fast around him for years. But today, compassion moved faster. Sometimes a person doesn't miss a flight. They're guided to the place where they're needed most. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from. And subscribe for more stories that honor the quiet heroes we often overlook.